What fond memories I have of my first July 4th in Southport. It began on the early evening of July 3rd, 1985. I was visiting Southport for the first time, and it was not to attend the street dance. I was driving down for my first shift in the emergency room at Dozier Memorial Hospital. I was a third-year resident in internal medicine at New Hanover Memorial Hospital in Wilmington. I was moonlighting, as it was called, to help cover the nights, weekends, and holidays at the hospital. In 1985, the ER did not require daytime coverage. The local doctors would do that in between patients in their clinic. My shift would begin at 6 p.m. and end at 6 a.m. the morning of the 4th. As I was driving down, I had the radio on and was not really listening that closely to it, for this was my first time traveling to Southport, and the road was narrow, winding, and unfamiliar, until I heard the radio announcer say, 30,000 expected in Southport, July 4th Festival. I first tried not to run off the road, and then said to myself, those guys did not tell me this when they put me on the schedule the eve and the early morning of July 4th. I had never heard of the July 4th celebration in Southport, and I was told afterwards that the doctors on the schedule, OB residents at New Hanover, were laughing all afternoon because they knew I was unaware of what was going on in Southport and what I would be facing. I was told before I reluctantly agreed to work at Dozier, it's not that busy. It's a small town, and you will do fine. In reality, on this July 3rd and 4th, Southport was not a small town. It was very busy in the ER, and I hoped that everything would go well. I was up all night taking care of patients of all ages. The very first one, a pediatric patient, a little girl with red hair who had an earache, whose mother screamed when I introduced myself as Dr. Hatem. This patient's mother and I were from the same hometown, Roanoke Rapids, North Carolina, and were distant cousins. We had not seen each other in years. Julia Daniel, the beloved nurse of Dozier ER, told me later, you had not been here 5 minutes and was already causing a problem. I was thinking that this was going to be your first and last time here. She was uncertain as to what all the screaming was about. A well-known saying among ER doctors, all shifts eventually end, and mine did that early morning of July 4th. The doctor who relieved me brought me a sausage biscuit from Hardee's as a peace offering. He was still laughing. He then reminded me to finish up. Medicine rounds will be starting at New Hanover in a little over an hour. It was back to work for another full day at the hospital. As I was leaving, Southport was waking up to the excitement of July 4th. Parade, picnics, and fireworks. Little did I know then that Southport would become such a part of my life. And it all began 35 years ago on July 4th.
The Southport 4th of July Festival really has, I think, two things that are most meaningful to me. One of them is the fact that it's just such a wonderful classic slice of small town Americana, especially the main parade itself. You've got community groups, firemen, police, veterans, local businesses, high school marching bands, all those types of groups, fraternal organizations that all come together and just make it such a fun event. The children really love it. It's really emotional, actually, I think, to a lot of us to watch, especially see some of the veterans and other groups like that. The other thing that I think is really meaningful is the fact that it is really a time to think about and reflect on and appreciate the values that our founding fathers set up our country to have, equality, justice, freedom, and those types of things that really are so important to all of us, and especially in this day and age that we're having more focus on ensuring that those types of values are available to all Americans, and it really gives us a great chance to kind of reflect on that and rededicate both ourselves individually and hopefully our city and our country to those ideals.
The 4th of July, for me, has always been about family. No matter where we were, our entire extended family would come home for the 4th of July. And home was North Carolina, usually in the early days, my cousin's backyard. And they lived in a little North Carolina town called Liberty. I know, I get the symbolism there. When my cousins eventually moved, the picnic was usually in my grandparents' backyard, and then sometimes in aunts or uncles. The main thing I remember, going way back as far as my early childhood, was that over the course of the day, eventually my grandfather, who was a history buff, would start talking about history. And of course, all day there had been family history, who married who, and what were their children's names, and where did they move to, and so on. But my grandfather would start talking about the Declaration of Independence. Now, he was a newspaper owner, publisher, editor, and he would talk about how it took multiple rewrites to get the Declaration of Independence correct. Over and over, draft after draft, and he thought that was just the funniest thing. And it's so typical. You edit, and even as up to July the 4th, 1776, they didn't have it to where everybody agreed. 13 colonies, 4 didn't like it. But eventually we got the Declaration of Independence. And he also liked to say, remember, everybody remember, that in the beginning it lists our inalienable rights, and they begin with life. We have the inalienable rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Nothing matters if you don't have life. And that is why I wear this, and why I want you to wear this. I wear it for your life, you wear it for mine, so that we can have liberty and pursue happiness wherever it is for us. Thank you.
The 4th of July is a day to celebrate, representing the birth of the United States of America as an independent nation. On this day, July 4th, 1776, 13 colonies claimed their independence, creating a new nation, and America was born. On this day, we celebrate with outdoor activities, parades, good food, and fireworks to remind all that we are very fortunate to be living in a free nation thanks to this brave and forward thinking of our forefathers. The first reading of the Declaration of Independence was in Philadelphia, July 8th, 1776, and officially celebrated on the insistence of John Adams a year later on July 4th, 1777. Even though this year's celebration will not be traditional, we should not forget why this day is so crucial to our existence. We must also continue to fight racism and discrimination in our country to make us whole. Stay safe and healthy. Enjoy the day.
What does the 4th of July in Southport mean to me? My 4th of July holiday week almost always starts with a house full of people and is filled with special moments. Seeing people take the naturalization oath on the Garrison lawn and become a citizen of America on the 4th of July is powerful. Seeing the local firefighters compete with each other for bragging rights and the spectators cheering and standing in the way to get accidentally sprayed to cool off makes me smile and reminds me of a simpler time. I was first introduced to a special Southport 4th of July tradition about 23 years ago.
My neighbors, GW and Lena Fisher on North Atlantic Avenue, had the biggest backyard on our block, and maybe even in all of Old Town Southport. And on the 4th of July, it was their tradition every year to have a cookout cover dish for neighbors, family, friends, and friends of friends. And then in the evening, who was of a mind to would walk down to the waterfront for the fireworks. This annual ritual began on the morning of the 4th. Early the day would start, decorating the yard with streamers strung from the trees and the tables with displays of red, white, and blue from the party store. After we got the yard set up and the coolers full of ice, I would head home to make potato salad and prepare my homemade ice cream. I want to say burgers and dogs on a hot grill, that was GW's specialty. GW had a special Stars and Stripes apron that he wore every 4th of July. And Lena had a big, red, heart-shaped casserole dish that she always made the baked beans in. I always made 2 kinds of ice cream, vanilla and either peach or banana. Banana was always GW's favorite. Lena and GW created an extended family reunion every 4th of July, and I am grateful that I was there. GW and Lena lived 2 doors down. The historic plaque on their home memorialized the fact that the house had been built by Lena's grandfather in the 1800s. GW and Lena grew up in Southport. Lena told me their togetherness began at age 11 when GW asked her to accompany him to the Boy Scout banquet. That would have been about 75 years ago. I had the great fortune to be part of GW and Lena's 4th of July tradition for many years. And the gift of GW and Lena's spirit of generosity helped create the sense of belonging and responsibility that connects me to Southport. So, what does the 4th of July in Southport mean to me? It means I'm home.
So what does the 4th of July celebration in Southport mean to me? It means being happy. It means seeing a lot of happy, cheerful faces when I get to ride on the float with the beautification committee volunteers and waving and having those people wave back at me, and how good that feels to be part of a community that's so happy on that day. It also gives me a really good sense of pride and humility when I get to observe the naturalization ceremony and see those folks that have worked hard. I mean, they worked hard. They had to study and to take a test and be disciplined so that they can become part of our greater community in the United States, and how much they want that. And it just gives me a lot of pride to see that. And then the very end, of course, is fireworks. Everybody loves fireworks, me included, and I love the colors that we get to have and the shapes that they make and how everybody oohs and ahs, and it just gives you a warm feeling all over. So that's what the 4th of July means to me.
4th of July in Southport is really a family reunion. It's community coming together and enjoying each other's company. Over the years, I've seen a lot of changes. When I was a young person, I remember a lot of activities like magicians performing at the Indian Trail Tree, military exhibitions of parachutists dropping out of the sky with red, white, and blue streamers, landing on the garrison, military vehicles parked up and down the waterfront where children could climb all over them and pretend to shoot guns. We had things like a donkey ball, which was a local baseball game, softball game in Taylor Field, where the local civic leaders would get on donkeys and play softball. There might have been a little drinking at the time, and it was quite an interesting thing. We also had the world's largest ice cream sundae. I'm a little too young to remember the true longest sundae, but I do remember years where we all met and the 4th of July committee would serve ice cream to everyone in the community. It was quite an event. We had speedboat racing in the water. We had water skiing exhibitions. Lots of different activities. We also had the frying pan lightship, which stood at the end of Howe Street. It was a tourist attraction that people would go on and walk through the old lightship. We had military vessels and U.S. Coast Guard ships that would sit at the end of the city pier. I mention a lot of these things because these are things that don't happen anymore. We've seen a lot of changes. 2020 has presented a lot of changes for us, but I'll tell you now, it won't stop 4th of July. We might not have a parade. We might not have a street dance, but we still can come together and enjoy each other. As a young person, my biggest memory of Southport are all the different people who led as the chairman of the 4th of July committee. It was always the thing that I thought was the most important civic duty you could have. Over the years, we've had many people who have contributed to keep this festival going. I would like to thank Randy Jones and Tricia Howarth for all their efforts in putting on this festival during these trying times. It is truly the greatest service you can provide to Southport. From my family, I wish you a very happy 4th of July, and God bless America.
I'm really excited to experience my first 4th of July here in Southport. Even though it'll be a virtual one, I think it'll be really fun. Hopefully we'll be able to celebrate next year's July 4th festival with the real deal. 4th of July to me means family cookouts, barbecues, spending time with family and friends, camping at the ocean, and just basically having a good time.